evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Vincent Price, and welcome to my world. For those of you who are faint of heart and weak of stomach, I must warn you, this program is filled with chills, suspense, horror, the weird and the gruesome. The most famous names in the world of horror, the unholy three. Lon Chaney Sr., the man of 1,000 faces, who will forever be remembered for his Hunchback of Notre Dame and the Phantom of the Opera. Boris Karloff, who came to us as a Christmas present in 1931 as Frankenstein's monster. And the 500-year-old undying Count Dracula, the great vampire figure, Bela Lugosi. Now, Lon Chaney Sr. left us a son, Lon Chaney Jr. His contribution was the unfortunate lycanthrope Larry Talbot, the Wolf Man. And who can forget the Lord High Minister of all that is sinister, Peter Lorre. Peter first came to the attention of the American horror fans in the picture Mad Love. Welcome the brilliant actor whose fine characterizations have immortalized so many luminaries in the Horror Hall of Fame, Mr. Frank Gorshin.
Well,
Frank,
very nice of you.
very nice of you.
Very nice of you. Sit down. You're making fun of me.
No, I'm not at all. Frank, you've done so many impersonations of very famous people, but I think some of your best are the horror stars.
When I was a kid, I always loved going to see a spooky picture, a horror picture, you know, with Boris Karloff or Bela Lugosi and that kind of people. And the monsters they played were so believable. I mean, these people were great actors.
Yes, they were.
The monsters that they created were real. They had soul, whatever it was. But anyway, they would scare so much that a person watching the movie would at least this was true of myself. You know, I find that fascinating. I wanted to do it, and I find myself scaring the whole family. And with my brother, I would carry on with him. And to this day, I change my kid's diaper like Bela Lugosi.
You know,
it's time to change your diaper. Shame on you. Shame on you.
Boris was an extraordinary man. Did you ever know him? Did you know him, Boris? Huh? Karloff?
No,
He was a very brave and a really strong man. You know, he was very badly crippled at the end of his life, and yet he would go right ahead and play, get out of his wheelchair and work.
Yeah, he must have been a nice man.
He was a wonderful man. You have a very funny story about him that I like.
I was just going to mention that. I did a recording of a single on which I did an impression of Boris Karloff.
Yeah.
I forget which studio it was here in town, but I left the studio, and then after I finished, Boris Karloff himself, so I found out the next day, came in because he had to record something, and the people in the studio played my impression of him.
Yes.
And I was told then that he listened to it and found it amusing, and afterwards he said, "That's very nice, but I don't lisp."
Do a little Lugosi.
Yeah, I do, but I just did. I changed my kids' diapers. The other guy, who played the mummy? Was it Karloff?
That was Karloff, too.
Oh, it was Karloff?
Yes, yeah.
You know, I loved doing the mummy.
Yes, I did, too.
I used to do him. What fascinated me, can you see John Wayne playing the mummy? I would always love it. Was like in a picture, you'd see Turhan Bey or John Carradine cooking the tannel leaves. And then our friend Karras, Karras was his name.
Yes.
Karras would get up and he would walk. He would stalk the night like that. And he was so spooky. And he never walked any faster than that.
No, never.
That always amazed me, because whenever he was chasing somebody, no matter how fast they were running.
No, he caught them, though, eventually. He just tired them out. Lugosi, I think, I would love to have met him, but as a matter of fact, I did do one personal appearance tour with him very early on in my career, and he was really a mysterious man. He never was around. He just sort of would disappear. He'd come out on the stage, and then nobody knew where he went.
Well, he turned into a bat.
I think so. Good. You know, thanks to your hearty appetite, horror films have never been more popular than they are today. Have you seen the lines of people trying to get in to see The Exorcist? As a matter of fact, we have a special wing in the Horror Hall of Fame for today's films. Films that have produced new and exciting stars, like England's Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee, the current popular incarnation of Count Dracula. And, of course, this gentleman, bon vivant, art critic, gourmet, lady killer. Well, now it's about time to talk about the horror films which down through the years have become classics. Since 1897, there have been over 7,000 pure horror films made. The most popular, and one that's been made and remade many times, is Robert Louis Stevenson's classic Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, about the dual nature of man, with the evil split off taking dominance over the good side. Dr. Jekyll was actually the first man who could truthfully say, "The devil made me do it."
And then there is a charter member of the Horror Hall of Fame who has lent his poesque presence to innumerable great horror films.
And that can be only one man, the frighteningly distinguished Mr. John Carradine. John, lovely to see you again.
Nice to see you, Vinny.
Thank you.
In a long time.
It has been a long time.
I think the last time we saw each other was in a film which, while it was not a horror film, was certainly a horror.
Yes, it was a long one, that's for sure. John, you know, you have been connected with the classics and with horror films, but I think one of the fascinating things to go back into is the background of horror in the theater. Tell us a little bit about it.
Goes a long way back.
Yes.
I did one of those original horror plays on Broadway with Elizabeth Bergner.
What was that?
The Duchess of Malfi,
Oh,
John Webster, who was a contemporary of Shakespeare.
And the whole Jacobean theater actually was based on horror and revenge.
And then, of course, there's always a little touch of the Grand Guignol, too,
Yes.
which helps a bit.
Yes, it does. A few heads rolling on the floor. Never heard a picture before. What was the second one you saw? The first one you saw
The
was...
first one I saw was The Golem.
Yes, tell us about that a little.
I don't remember it very much. I was only about 14 years old.
I remember it took place in Prague, in the ghetto, and the man was made of clay, and that he was born to slay. I think that's what got me to go to the theater. He was made to help the situation, but then he turned on the people. Tell us something about John Barrymore, who was a great friend of yours. I only met him once, and I've always been jealous of you.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, you know, he had his own sense of the macabre.
Yes.
He owned a vulture, which he bought in Chile, or in Peru. Peru, I think it was. And he used to sit on a perch in his home up on Tower Road.
Yeah.
And they would sit together, nose to nose. And Barrymore thought it was love. Until he went on the wagon, and then the vulture would have nothing to do with him. You see, it was his alcoholic breath the vulture relaxed.
I like that. He was a magnificent actor. His Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde was a performance I'll never forget. He, you know, so many of these pictures have been made and remade, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and I think that we all remember, at least I remember, Chaney Sr. John, you played in quite a few horror films.
No, it wasn't Blood the Rock. It was Norman Carey.
It was Norman Carey.
Norman
Yes,
Carey,
it was
yes,
indeed.
yes, yeah.
But, you know, you and I have never played in a horror film together.
No, and I've never played a monster.
I never have played a monster.
I was offered one and turned it down.
Yeah.
I turned down Frankenstein.
Well, after doing...
Boris took it.
You're kidding.
I turned it down.
You're kidding.
No, I'm not.
Oh, that's...
They sent me out to the makeup department, and the makeup man started mixing up a bowl of plaster, and I, being a sculptor, knew just what he was up to.
Yeah.
He made a life mask, and I said, wait a minute, what is this? What is this?
Yeah.
He said, this is, you play a monster. I said, oh, do I have any dialogue? He said, no. I said, I don't have any dialogue? No, you just grunt. I said, this is not for me, and I walked out.
Oh, dear.
3 months later, they got Boris, and he took it.
It did
I never regretted it, and he never ceased to regret it.
But now you and I did do something sort of vaguely in common. I did the second Invisible Man picture, The Invisible Man Returns. And let's see, now, you know, in talking about the other...
I did a bit in the first one.
In the first one you
I
did.
played a such a yokel with a frowsy mustache, a muffler, and a bowler hat who goes to a phone booth and calls the police and says, I just saw the Invisible Man.
I wonder if the producers of the first horror films back in the early 1900s ever understood that they truly created a monster. Millions upon millions of dollars are spent annually on not only the price of admission to horror movies, but on all sorts of horror merchandise. Look at it. Horror books, mass records, models, posters, novelties, you name it. And there are even those who poke a little fun at us. Even television gave us horror with humor. And now the Horror Hall of Fame welcomes Mr. John Astin. John, please be seated. I would like to make you feel at home. This is your kind of house, isn't it?
Thank you. Yes, very cozy.
I must say, I was a tremendous fan of the Addams Family and of Charles Addams, forever and ever.
Thank you. Well, so was I.
Yes. But it was such a fun show. It was kind of a healthy show.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. A couple of articles appeared by psychiatrists saying that the Addams Family was probably the healthiest show on the air because, in spite of the fact it was a weird family to the outside world, it was a very loving family. And,
it was.
There was a great deal of communication. I never thought of it as a horror show.
No, I never did either. It was a comedy.
Just sort of like Home.
Yeah. That scene we just saw with the dentist, I mean, that was really homey.
Yeah, I think what Addams did in the cartoons really gave me the key for my character, and I always thought he was spoofing the cliche.
Yeah.
And using the device of horror, such as "May I borrow a cup of cyanide?"
Yes, I love it. I love it. And Carolyn Jones and Jackie
Yes.
Coogan, all those super
Ed Cassidy,
people. Yes, they were a wonderful bunch of people.
Wonderful to work with and very, very talented.
What do you think of all this stuff? I think it's kind of fun.
Well, the horror business is really something today. You know, you can take a walk along Hollywood Boulevard. You can see Frankenstein faces and vampire fangs, weird, freaky creatures of every shape and color, and that's without going into the stores.
Well, you say that again. And don't forget Wax Lips.
How could I forget Wax?
Remember Wax Lips? She was a lovely girl, wasn't she? Yes. Now, for example, here is one of the world's best-selling magazines, The Famous Monsters of Filmland. It's edited by one of the foremost authorities on horror, Forrest J. Ackerman. This is a kind of cartoon of him, but I love it.
He's from Harwood, California.
Yeah.
Forgive me for that.
And there's even here's
Phantom of the Opera.
This one.
You know, this is. I believe this is patterned after Fred Gwynne, who played Herman Munster on,
That's right,
on the Munsters.
On the Munsters. And here is, you know, a Phantom of the Opera model. It glows in the dark. See? And here's a Godzilla model. And that one glows in the dark, too. And during the energy crisis, you can ride it to work.
Well, I think you have a monster cookbook back there.
Yes, there is one, yes.
It's Eye of Newt, Pate of Yak, some of your favorites.
Very good.
And 33 ways to make goulash. And there's also a recipe in there for the official cocktail of
What's that?
Your cocktail, the Horror Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
2 parts vodka, 2 parts embalming fluid, leaves you breathless for 11 years. That is funny.
John, this past year, they revived one of the greatest songs of all time. Remember it?
That's right, the Monster Mash. Vincent Price.
Yes.
The Horror Hall of Fame is proud to announce this was your life. Your career really blossomed when you played opposite Helen Hayes on Broadway in Victoria, Regina.
Why shouldn't it have blossomed on my first part?
All right, and then you came to Hollywood and you took a giant leap forward. You were the voice of the Invisible Man in Abbott and Costello Meets Frankenstein. You didn't know I knew that,
One
did
of
you?
my best parts, absolutely.
And then in 1953, you made your first truly pure horror film, House of Wax.
The House of Wax in 3D.
House of Wax.
Yes.
And then in 1958, you chilled audiences in the House on the Haunted Hill, and it was reported that you left a permanent curse on that house.
No, that's not true. No, I went up and exercised it just the other day.
And now, who better than Vincent Price to portray the characters of one of the greatest writers of horror, mystery, and intrigue, Edgar Allan Poe, when you starred in The Pit and The Pendulum. And in 1963, you and several of your confreres decided to have a little fun with Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven.
The Raven. Oh, that was the most fun I think I ever had in a picture. And you know, that was Jack Nicholson's first part.
It was?
Yes, one of his very first parts.
It's got a long way since then.
Yeah.
In 1971, a great honor was bestowed upon you when you completed your 100th film, The Abominable Dr. Fives.
Oh, yes. Be sure you get that abominable in there.
Yes.
I thought it was abdominal, but that's not true.
I was there at the premiere.
Were you?
Yes.
Yes, I remember you were there at the premiere. Yeah.
You do?
Yes, I do. I do.
What was I wearing?
You were in, no, that was the other one, had the long wig on. No, yeah.
And in 1973, another success, you played no less than 8 Shakespearean characters in Theater of Blood.
Yes, it's the best horror movie I ever made, Theater of Blood.
And here's what Kevin Thomas of the Los Angeles Times has to say about Theater of Blood. If horror pictures were taken as seriously in America as they are all over the world, then Theater of Blood should receive an Academy Award.
Yeah, I love that.
And let us not forget, Vincent, your latest picture, in which you play, of all things, a horror picture star in the soon-to-be-released Madhouse. That was your life.